Great. Welcome, everyone. Hopefully you can hear us okay. There's a bit of a 20-second delay, so it might take us a little bit of time before we know that you're with us. But it's great to have you with us for this the session, this Q&A, all about performing at Cambridge, whether you're studying music or not. We'd love to have your questions, so do type them into the chat on the YouTube, and I'll keep an eye on those and field them to our panel. But it'd be great before we do that to know who's here. So I wonder if we could just go around and introduce ourselves. Chloe, you're next to me on my screen. Would you be able to tell us a bit about who you are?
Good afternoon. I'm delighted to be here today. I'm the Executive Director of the Cambridge University Musical Society, and I'm also the coordinator of the brand new Centre of Music Performance, which was just launched last month.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Looking forward to hearing hopefully a bit more about that in a minute. Maggie.
Yes, well, I'm Maggie Faultless. I'm the Director of Performance at the faculty, so that's slightly different from the incoming director of the centre, but the centre is just going to be the most exciting place to coordinate all sorts of performance activities in Cambridge. I also help oversee with you the instrumental award scheme. I run a period instrument Baroque orchestra and help everybody who's reading music who wants to take performance as part of their assessed examinations to sort of forge their performance path in Cambridge.
Brilliant, thank you. And Peter.
Hello, I'm Peter Foggett. I am Director of Music in Chapel at Emmanuel College, and I'm one of two coordinators of the Choral Awards scheme.
Brilliant, thank you. And I'm Katie. I currently help run the Instrumental Awards scheme. I was at Cambridge a few years ago and am now an oboist as well. So did various performance-y things while I was at uni. Great. Do send in your questions so that we can answer them. Nothing's off piece as long as it's relevant vaguely to music performance at Cambridge. We'd just be answering your questions rather than just generic ones. But while those come in, perhaps we can just get started about, we often have questions about what does it look like to do music performance if you're not studying music? Are there things that aren't open to me? Are there things that are? What's the deal with that? Maggie, would you be able to?
You could do almost everything that somebody who is reading music does, except take a formal examination at the university. But all the orchestras and ensembles, the Comes orchestras, all the other music societies, all your college music activities, the chapel choirs, the organ scholarships, the IAS awards, I mean, they're all open to everybody. It's a very open society and very inclusive one. And that's one of the really exciting things about Cambridge, I think, is that at a college and university level, you can get involved. As I said, the only thing you can't do as a non-music student is to take a formal university exam playing your instrument or singing.
Brilliant, thank you. And actually, Holly just asked a similar question to that, but asking how much time do students get for extracurricular, and particularly music, particularly if they choose not to study it. I mean, that would apply if you do study it as well. It's quite an important question for Cambridge students. Chloe, do you have any thoughts on that?
We do have, for Comes, we have all our rehearsals in the evening, so there's no expectation that students are going to be available during the day to come to rehearsals, although we do hope that they have time to actually sort of practice their parts. So yes, it's very much sort of the evenings, but then of course if you've got a small ensemble, you can sort of find different times during the week and during the weekend to get together and rehearse as well. But yeah, some of the very big ones we stick to the evening. And it does depend on your course and you personally. You know, there are some students who take on the most extraordinary amount and still, you know, walk out with a top degree. So you have to think personally and prioritize what you would like to do.
I think time management's a really interesting question, and if that's the broader question, it was Holly, wasn't it? I think it's a really intelligent question. Thanks, Holly. There will be some weeks where you might seem that you've got more assignments to do for your course, and others where there'll be fewer. If you're in a chapel choir or an organist, then those timetables will be fixed. Other projects and ideas might be, events might be project based, so they'll happen in a single week or a couple of weeks. But I would discuss, when you come to Cambridge, I would say, be a little bit careful. It's easy to be overwhelmed and sign up for too many things because it's very exciting. But also, I would say, don't be overcautious and think, oh, well, I'll wait a whole year before signing up for anything, because on the whole, most courses are 3 years long. Your director of studies and your tutor and other students will advise you. And you know yourself whether you've got bags of energy or whether you need to sort of take stock a little bit. So Peter, how do the chapel choirs work on the whole? Some require, have more services than others, don't they?
Yes. There are some chapel choirs that will take over your entire life, which, I mean, from my point of view, I sang as an undergraduate in a chapel choir that took over my life, and I really enjoyed that experience. I know that some people don't want that for themselves. And some people discover as they come to university or spend more time here that is a thing they want, and so end up singing with a higher commitment choir in later years at uni. The choirs range from having 1 service a week to having 7 services a week, and the amount of rehearsal time varies more or less commensurately between those. The thing that I always say to people at the start of their time here is that they should have a diary and a bicycle. And to be able to get from one rehearsal to another, or from a lecture to a rehearsal, or from any 2 points in Cambridge to one another with a bike, takes no more than 5 minutes, I'd have thought. If you cycle slightly recklessly and try to ignore the tourists, you can get from the music faculty to, say, Jesus on the other side of Cambridge in less than 5 minutes, which is really useful because it means then that you can fit in more stuff, which is a thing that I find, that I certainly as an undergraduate found very rewarding. And I know that a lot of people with whom I work now who are undergraduates also find that rewarding. But I think as others have said, it's important to try to create a balance that works for you, and not to be either oversubscribed or undersubscribed. You don't want to leave here thinking, I wish I did more extracurriculars. And I think there are people who do leave here thinking that and not realizing that there was all this fun to be had if you just sort of stayed up a bit later or got up a bit early or learned how to type 120 words a minute.
There's also getting involved in the management of the committees and the societies, which can be a really important. So it's, that can then help on, your career, whatever you go into. So there's that aspect as well, being part of the music societies, that I would recommend to really sort of get involved in the behind the scenes as well as performing.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you all. And those obviously with the caveats of looking after yourself and knowing yourself. And nearly everyone manages to do a decent amount of extracurricular, whatever the course. So there is that opportunity. I was always amazed that some of the leaders of the orchestras when I was there were studying natural sciences and had a very full-on timetable, but were some of the best musicians out there. And that was wonderful. We've got an interesting question from Kirsty, who says, for the performance element of the course, so looking specifically at the music degree, is it a requirement to perform on traditional classical instruments, or can recitals be done on non-traditional instruments? Perhaps Maggie, you could
they could be on anything. We have a jazz recital, at least one jazz recital every year. We have people doing actually music theatre vocal recitals, which is interesting. Obviously very different vocal techniques than the ones you require in a chapel. I've had an inquiry this year from somebody who may want to do a recital on a traditional Chinese instrument. The answer is I'm open to everything. You'll need to have a teacher to teach you, because we need to be in touch with them to sort of structure your learning a little bit. And the other thing is that if it's a non sort of typical instrument, or indeed even if it is a typical instrument, we have specialist examiners to examine the recitals. So I might need, I don't know if there's somebody's got an idea of what the instrument that they're thinking of, but we would need to be able to find an examiner in the UK to help us assess it. Although a lot of the ideas of what a good performance are, of course, apply to absolutely any instrument or genre. So most of the exam criteria are exactly the same, whatever instrument or voice type you have.
Brilliant, thank you. And actually, Isabel was asking a similar question, saying performance module in the exam is the main focus on the classical style, or can students explore a range of different styles? And again, I imagine exactly the same would apply.
Yeah, any style, and actually a lot of your, not a lot, but some of your studies as an undergraduate in the music department will certainly be looking away from the classical tradition towards very different things. So that I'm very keen actually that the recitals keep up with that. Interestingly, the recitals have tended to be on the conservative side on the whole. So I think that I'm very happy to work with students and with their teachers who want to explore different things. You can also sometimes offer chamber music. For part 2, you can now offer some videos as well. So you could offer conducting as part of your, as it were, portfolio of submissions for performance assessment. So I've been working very hard since I've been at Cambridge to broaden that sphere. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. A question about college music societies and whether you can join ones that aren't your own college. Peter, would you mind telling us about how that works with choral choirs and the choral things, and then Chloe perhaps for instruments, other ensembles?
The choral awards work in basically 2 different ways. There's a process that happens immediately following you getting your offer of an academic place. And when you receive that, you have an obligation, if you want to apply through the choral awards process, to apply to the college who's given you the place. Obviously, if that doesn't suit you, if you have a place at a college that sings 1 service a week and you want to sing 7 services a week, then what you have to do then is start making contact with other directors of music and try to talk to them in some other way, which is quite difficult to do. So what we recommend is that you apply to a college whose choir is one in which you want to sing. In February, then, you make this application to be a choral scholar or a choral exhibitioner or volunteer. From there, you apply to your first choice college, the one that you have a place at, and then a number of other ones, depending on what you fancy. All of those directors of music will hear you, and one of them, or more than one of them, might want to take you. That's the end of that process. And if you get a place in that system, then that's all done and you come up in October. But we almost invariably, across all the colleges, have vacancies after the academic results have come out in August, and indeed throughout the year. So when you come up to Cambridge, it's quite possible, and a lot of people do this, to sing in a chapel choir of a college that is not your own. I am just looking here at the list of my chapel choir, and about half of them don't go to my college. And actually, the colleges are really good about this. You could be forgiven for thinking that they might get a bit uppity about giving money and opportunities to students that are not their own. But actually, at pretty much every college, so far as I know, you get singing lessons and tours that are either free or subsidized. And there's usually some sort of dining laid on, and sort of post-service wine and stuff like that. So that there are various benefits that are made available to you, no matter which college you're at, and no matter what your combination of college and choir is. And I think people always say they feel very welcome. There's something really lovely about having essentially 2 colleges to call home, and having a college in which you're singing in the chapel choir, you're there a number of times per week, can be kind of welcome respite from being in your own college.
Brilliant, thank you. And Chloe, any thoughts about other ensembles that don't come under the choral awards?
I think that for instrumentalists, it's similar, that colleges welcome other students from other colleges to play in their groups. Some, big symphony orchestras, Clare and King's often sort of have big concerts and invite lots of other students. I think that the colleges sort of have different identities, and that can depend on the director of music or that year's student sort of committee. But it's sort of very much for the taking, and if there isn't an ensemble in your college that you want to set up, you can do it, or create a society. I know very recently a student set up a samba society, and she managed to get a grant. She's got her drums, and she's sort of, ready to go, and she'll be sort of seeking, players from all over the university. So I think it's, yes, you're not sort of, if you go for one college, you're not sort of just stuck in that.
No, not at all. I was just thinking that, you might be the only student in the university who plays the bass clarinet and owns one, for example, in which case anybody throughout the university and probably beyond who's doing a piece that's got a bass clarinet in will be on the phone or the email to you asking you to play. And there never seemed to be enough sort of violinists and double bass players going around to populate the number of things that go on. But there will also be some college events which are quite not very high profile and very much for college students in a particular college. And there'll be a mixture of things. Big colleges sometimes do big projects or sometimes run a lot of chamber things. It really, you name it, and it happens at Cambridge, I think I'd be safe to say. Yeah, and if it doesn't happen yet, then start it.
Yes, and Maggie touched on a really helpful thing there, which is there's just a huge range of performance. So there are very high caliber auditioned ensembles, there are very chilled non-audition ensembles, and everywhere in between. Often the more chilled versions happen at a college level, but not necessarily. And that's just brilliant, because it means that people, whatever their music backgrounds, however much time they've got to practice, there will be something that fits what you want to do. And like Maggie said, if not, set it up, and there will probably be people who are keen, which is one of the delights of doing music somewhere like Cambridge. And on that note, someone asked if there's currently a recorder ensemble running at Cambridge. I know there was when I was a student, but it kind of ebbs and flows a bit depending on who's around.
Somebody's very much trying to run one, and there is a Renaissance consort of instruments, and we can provide. I can steer a little bit of funding towards coaching from Bill Lyons, actually, even, which is amazing. He happens to live in Cambridge, so I'll put you in touch with the other people who want to get that going very much. But there's a very keen, I think she even works at the university or postgraduate, who's been in charge of that for the last couple of years. So great, thank you.
Brilliant. So yes, come and join. Maggie, a question about the CamRam scheme. The question from Sarah is, do all colleges participate in it? But perhaps you could tell us a bit more about that.
All colleges participate in that. The requirements are that basically 99% of the places on the scheme, that's quite difficult maths, isn't it, when there are only 10 places, but you know what I mean, are for second and third years. It's a much trickier thing to know what life is going to be like in Cambridge for you before you arrive. I don't know you, I don't know you're playing, which is why it's harder to audition for the scheme going into your first year. So it is ostensibly for second and third years who want to experience this conservatoire style teaching at the academy, if they've opted to do performance in the tripos. That's the connection. It's not open to everybody in the university or even all music students. You have to have selected the performance option in the exams, because it's then the CamRam lessons are the equivalent of your supervisions for that bit of the examination, if that makes sense. But actually this year we've got, I think, 14 people on the scheme. It's just sort of expanded a bit, which is very exciting.
Brilliant, thank you. A question about practice rooms, and again, what's available, and is there any difference between music students and non-music students, and what's available? Chloe, would you mind telling us about what's kind of available centrally, and then perhaps someone on a college basis?
It does depend on your college and how many practice rooms they have available. So if that's important to you, it would be worth sort of, looking at the colleges that do have more practice rooms. And if you're, for example, on the instrumental awards scheme, you have access to the faculty to be able to rehearse there with your group. I think. I think that's, I don't know. I can't say any more about that. Really, we did. Yeah.
No, that's helpful. And Peter, what is it like for your experience at colleges in practice rooms? And
it's usually pretty easy to get hold of a room in in which to practice. I think unless your college has no practice rooms, I can't think of any colleges that don't have any at all. A lot of colleges have a stock of pianos. I know that some music students can generally expect to have a piano in their room, and choral scholars in some places also can expect to have a piano. So if your neighbours don't mind you practicing, that's always an option as well. And then it's often the case that colleges have, in addition to practice rooms, some sort of performance space in which you can practice while someone else is using it. That may in fact just be the dining room or the chapel or the master's lodge. There are so many pianos around Cambridge and so many harpsichords and organs and things that if you're in need of a larger instrument like that, it's always pretty easy to find one. But for practicing normally, you can often get away with practicing in your room.
Brilliant, thank you. Yes, and that was my experience, that I could just practice in my room a lot, but there were both college and faculty level rooms that I could hire out, and it was only really the faculty ones that were more exclusively for either music students or, like Chloe said, if you're on the Instrumental Awards scholarship.
Yeah, because during the day, those rooms at the faculty are obviously teaching rooms, but a lot of colleges do have rooms. A lot of music students actually have electric pianos in their rooms, so in fact that you can practice all hours of the day or night. But there are, some situations where there are quite sophisticated practice facilities at various colleges.
Brilliant, thank you. We've got a range of different questions, some of them related to what we've said already, just kind of building on those. So someone said, as a cellist hoping to study languages, what are the different kind of levels of ensemble I can get involved in? We talked earlier about there being a wide range of levels, and again, all of those would be open to you no matter what you were studying. And languages being an art subject, you'd have a less full-on schedule than a scientist, so you would have the same flexibility as music students. So very high auditioned or very, very chilled and everything in the middle there. Someone's asked about, we mentioned events such as the jazz and musical theatre concerts, and I just wondered if these styles ever integrate with the music degree course as well. So Maggie's mentioned that you could use those styles in a recital. We're mainly talking about performance today, but maybe we could just touch on the degree course as well. Are there other ways in which those styles could integrate with the course?
Those styles are very much addressed in the course. They're not just a question of whether or not they might integrate. They're part of the core studies now. Yeah. And very early on, options even in the first year, let alone the second and third year, where you can steer your degree almost you don't. I would think by the third year you don't really have to deal with classical music at all unless you want to. No. I would go that far. Peter, would you say? Yes, if I look at the options that you could do sort of very contemporary composition and a different performance style. Your dissertation could be about non-classical music. Your analysis portfolio could be, you could choose non-classical options in the history papers. So you could, you can let it go by then, and largely let it go in the second year.
My younger brother recently finished doing music at Cambridge and managed to make his third year basically entirely jazz and pop. So it's possible. A question about being a pianist. Obviously, a lot of orchestras and ensembles would not be for piano. What's available ensemble-wise as a pianist? Chloe or Maggie?
Well, Chloe, you do sometimes need pianists actually in some orchestral pieces, but you're right, all the chamber music possibilities are there for you. Obviously, you can also do solo recitals in a way that other people can't necessarily. You could form a piano duo. You could get composers to write for you. You could start improvising and join the jazzers, or you could start playing continuo in the Baroque orchestras. So I think, although you're absolutely right, there probably aren't quite so many opportunities for large-scale ensemble playing as there are for violinists, say. But I'm serious about continuo, actually. Playing for Baroque operas or something has been something that people have gone on into the profession from Cambridge, developing those interests, or playing the organ for chapel choirs, playing keyboard for big choir rehearsals and projects that don't have orchestras. Gosh, that's quite a long list. What have I forgotten?
And we do have a concerto competition. So we have lots of pianists that apply for that. So that's another opportunity, and they obviously play with the orchestras that come through.
You're never underemployed as a pianist in Cambridge. I think although there are fewer opportunities of the official kind, particularly if you can sight read, or if you're inclined to learn how to sight read better, people are constantly going to be calling you up and asking you to do stuff. So although it may be the case that there are more formally constituted opportunities for players of orchestral instruments, you'll find that every day of the week there's something for you to do if you want to do it.
Brilliant, thank you so much. Chloe, perhaps you can answer this one. So talking about larger instruments, so Kirsty's saying some universities offer a space to store those near their music faculties. It's a double basis. Does Cambridge offer something similar?
I mean, our double basis always manage to find somewhere in their colleges. So, and if, for example, we have a couple of nights on the trots of rehearsals, then we sort of manage to help out a bit with storing it. But yes, I mean, obviously, if you can find a college close to the music faculty, that's good, and then you can just sort of wheel it up. But I've never known players not be able to play because it's tricky for them.
And I've occasionally helped people out, but the best thing is to make a friend in Selwyn. It would be my first experience. Possibly Robinson, but yeah, basically Selwyn is the place to head for. But yeah, as Chloe says, we can help, because I appreciate that some people, if you might live quite a walk away, but it is that's the sort of deal. There aren't lockers at the music faculty, even for smaller instruments, though. There are no lockable spaces for students to sort of hire, or you won't have a permanent locker if that's a question, because I know at some universities or conservatoires you can get that sort of thing, and you might have had a locker at school, but you won't have one at the music faculty.
And I have known harpists manage to get permission to bring a car to Cambridge as well, so they can get their harp backwards and forwards. So that's another thought. Yeah,
thank you. Just one quick clarifying question on the CamRAM scheme, really quickly, Maggie. Which is how you apply. Do you have to audition?
You have to send a video, and at the end of your first year, quite early on in the summer term, actually, I write to everybody explaining the application process. So it happens, it happens during the summer before the second year.
Brilliant, thank you. And just thinking about music lessons, so a lot of people will be keen to continue music lessons. If they're a non-music student, is it possible to get lessons within the music department? Or indeed, as a music student, is it possible to get lessons within the music department?
That's a very good question. And the answer is that there are no fixed instrumental or vocal teachers attached to the music faculty as such. If you're a choral scholar or an organ scholar, mostly, I think I'm right, Peter, that your college will arrange singing and even organ lessons for you. Yep. But as an instrumentalist, obviously there are so many instruments and people have very personal sort of ideas. Some people want to stay with the teacher they've been at. Some people definitely want to move. Some people have consultation lessons over the summer. And quite a lot of people get in touch with me at the start of term asking for advice. And I would then ask you, what level is your playing? How much do you want to practice? What do you want to achieve, in your practice and your lessons? And then we'll make some suggestions to you. I would say if you're not a music specialist, and by that I don't mean reading music or not, there is a very good website. And if you Google music teachers in Cambridge, there's a national website that tells you about a whole variety of teachers who live within the Cambridge area. And you can obviously then extend the search to slightly further away. But that's got some really fantastic teachers there. So if you don't want to commute to London or travel further afield for lessons, and you haven't got anybody, that's a very good starting point. In my experience, the very best teachers who live in Cambridge and have space in their teaching timetable are on that website. but I can help, and I have other specialist lists that I can discuss with you and discuss your requirements.
It's worth saying, I think, from your college's point of view, colleges love you to have instrumental lessons because it means that you're performing well within college and bringing something extra to them. And often the way they respond to that is to give you money to have those lessons, which is brilliant. So everyone wins, and you can apply usually to some sort of committee within your college who magnanimously give out money on a regular basis. And you can do that, I think, often in advance even of coming up to Cambridge, but certainly once you've arrived, your college is delighted to hear that you'd like to have lessons and will be glad to subsidise those.
Thank you. And that's applicable to whatever you're studying, those kind of awards. So yes, do make the most of all those things that college offers. Whenever you get an email saying money for this, have a think and think, is there something that I could use that for? Because yeah, they want to give you those opportunities, which is amazing. Question about composition, and are there any music composition opportunities for those who don't study it? I don't know who might know about that. Chloe, do you know?
Yeah, there are lots and lots of opportunities for. I mean, if you're a composer, then you can still enter the composition competition that we have, even if you're not studying it, with CUMS, and then one of the ensembles would perform your composition. Again, as we've been saying about lots of things, there are always people looking out for talented musicians that they can work with. So if you're, it might be that it's not classical, and then you would get together with people at the ADC who are doing musical theatre or different genres. So it's hugely encouraged, and students love to play.
Yeah, there are also competitions at college level. Almost all chapel choirs have new music performed every term, and most of the chapel choirs I know include student compositions at that level. I'm sure that Richard Corsten, who's the head of composition at the university, would be very interested to meet anybody, even if they're not studying music. And there's a new music ensemble, so you might ask if you can write for them. You might find there are music students or non-music students who want to perform new music at your college or in the university in general. And I think in these days of how we use the internet, that sort of reaching out is a perfect example of how the internet can really help you, put you in touch with either players to play your music or the ideas of where to perform it or what sort of thing you might want to create and write.
Yeah, I just saw just only a couple of weeks ago, the student curator of the Kettle's Yard lunchtime concert series had asked for compositions that responded to the pandemic that would then be performed with a small chamber group. So it's that sort of thing that you'll just hear about and can get involved and have your music played.
Lovely. A question about, going back to the sort of college level, but it's kind of interplays everything else. Sarah's asking, how much influence does the director of music studies have over shaping your music degree and also the range of ensembles at your college? Obviously, when you've got lots of colleges to choose from, one of the factors is the person who's the director of music at that college. Anyone got any thoughts on that? Perhaps we hear from a couple of different people. I wonder if it's worth.
It might be worth differentiating between who performs certain jobs. There are several jobs at Cambridge, all of which sound the same, which are all quite different. Colleges will often have a director of music, and that person's job is to oversee all of the music making within college. And the word oversee is probably quite important. It's not their job to control it or necessarily tell you what to do, but rather to facilitate that happening. And so they'll maintain the college's stock of instruments and make sure the pianos are sort of moderately in tune and the hinges on the doors to the music practice rooms are in full operation, things like that. They'll also run the concert series and will oversee taking care of the financial side of things as well. That person is often the same, but not necessarily the same as the director of chapel music, whose job it is to run the chapel choir, if your college, which most do have a chapel choir. And they'll run not just the services, but also oversee the touring and recording schedules and so on for that. And then the third job, which sounds almost like those, but isn't, is Director of Studies, who again may be the same person, in which case they hopefully get paid a lot more and get less sleep. Their job is to oversee the academic side of music students' life in college. And again, they help you make decisions about what to do. But you come here and you have to make your own decisions based on the information that's provided to you. And certainly if you ask them, do you think I should do this or do that? They might well give you their opinion on the subject. But it's very rarely the case that the Director of Studies would absolutely insist that you took a certain paper. But then their job is also to liaise with the senior tutor and pastoral people within college and make sure that everything that you're doing balances. So there's as much control over your life as you give them, but equally you can get up to whatever you like. The shaping of ensembles within college, I think specifically, is a very different thing. There generally is a chapel choir. There's often a sort of choral society style thing, some sort of voluntary group that is much lower pressure. And then, as we've already talked about, there are orchestras and chamber groups and so on that operate on a more or less collegiate level, but often, as Maggie said, if you're the only bass clarinetist in Cambridge, you might find yourself a member of 17 different college orchestras, and that's perfectly normal. So the role of a member of staff in this situation is as I say, someone who has oversight but isn't going to just dictate to you, or at least hopefully not. Thank
you. And the Director of Studies is in terms of if you're doing a music degree, like Peter said, we'll have sort of an advisory role. They'll meet with you every term, discuss things, and it's it might be worth inquiring if you know people at Cambridge, or you can get in touch with the college, just find out who the Director of Studies or Director of Music is, and that could have an impact. But again, people go on sabbatical, people go on maternity leave, so it could be different anyway. So it's not worth worrying about too much, even though they can they can have a significant impact in certain situations. So yeah, do a bit of research, find out, but don't worry about it too much. We've got a couple more questions here. Maggie, perhaps you could ask this one from Holly. What standard do Cambridge expect from their music students in terms of grades?
Well, none really, because it's not obligatory that you're an instrumental or vocal performer in order to take a degree at Cambridge. For taking a recital in a performance element in the tripos, as we call it, the exams, we recommend a starting point of sort of grade 8 plus, I would say, and that goes up to sort of diploma level for the second and third year and beyond. So I would say grade 8 plus to take a recital in your first year. But there's every chance to sort of discuss that with your Director of Studies, Director of Chapel, all these other people, and myself, before you commit to doing that.
Brilliant, thank you. And that kind of links into an expression about music scholarships. So maybe we could just quickly we've talked a bit about the choral awards, so who they're open to, but also to us about the other music scholarships as well, who they're open to, what kind of standard is expected. Chloe, would you mind telling us a bit about the instrumental scholarships that are available?
Yes, we have the Instrumental Awards Scheme, which you apply to after you've had your offer around Christmas time. So it's sort of February is the deadline for applying. And then the auditions are held just before the beginning of term when you arrive in Cambridge. And you can read all about it on the undergraduate website and the faculty website. But this is for chamber music, so it's about sort of 40 students, and we form, Maggie is the main artistic director for the scheme and examiner, and we form the different groups, string groups. There's a brass quintet and wind groups as well. And some of them stay together for their whole time at Cambridge and beyond, and get to play in Westfield Concert Hall, the Fitzwilliam Museum, Kettle's Yard, and colleges, and some London concerts as well. They might be asked to go and perform in. So that's a sort of wonderful opportunity. And I mean, it tends to be grade 8 distinction, but you know, an equivalent if you're coming from abroad and you haven't taken those grades. So it's of that sort of level that we're looking for. So, yes, Maggie, would you have anything to add on?
No, that's absolutely right.
And that is open to anyone, whether you're studying music or not. And the only consideration there is, again, what we were talking about at the start, you know, how much time do you have? And actually, if you're a medic, how many extracurricular things you take on might be different. If you want to be a rower as well, you might have to choose between rowing and doing a scholarship as well as training to be a doctor. I
mean, I would say that when part of the audition process, obviously most of the putting together the groups is done on musical grounds, but we sometimes try and put 4 medics together if they are of the similar standard, because it just means that they might have a greater understanding between each other of their commitment. Or we put a group of music students together, or perhaps 3 music students with a linguist, as Katie said. So we are aware of some of the timetabling commitments of science and medicine in particular.
Brilliant, thank you. We're coming towards the end of our session. Thank you so much for all the questions you put in. I've put in the YouTube chat that if there are questions that you have that haven't been answered today, or that you think of afterwards and think, oh, I wish I'd asked that, or if you're watching the recorded version afterwards, do email performance@muds.cam.ac.uk with those. We'd love to get back to you and just give you the information that we can to help you think about where you apply to university, what life might look like as a musician. If you come to Cambridge, we're really excited that some of you might be coming to Cambridge in a year or so's time. We've got this Centre of Music Performance that will be up and running by then. We're really hoping that will just bring an extra boost of life to all the activities that already go on, but just bring them all together. And we're really excited that now we're coming out of the pandemic, we can just get making live music again. And so again, hopefully by the time that your year is coming up, things will just be full guns blazing again. Cambridge is a brilliant place to make music, whatever you're studying. I think that would be the testimony of many students who've been there, and a great place to meet others doing that as well.
Thanks, Kate. I just wondered actually if could we leave the final little minute to Chloe just to tantalise us all with what this new centre is going to mean for us all. Chloe, can you summarise it in a
very quick nutshell? Yes. So we will be based in the Faculty of Music. We will be absolutely continuing our tradition of excellence, but we will be supporting a wider variety of genres and encouraging innovation and experimentation throughout the whole university, all levels of experience and for all whatever you're studying.
Sounds pretty good. Amazing. Thank you so much, everyone, for being with us. We're going to call it a day there, but as I said, do get in touch with further questions or get in touch via social media and someone will get back to you. If you want to come visit Cambridge, do get in touch with colleges, have a look on the websites. There are loads of people, current students, members of staff, who really want to make the whole experience of applying as easy as possible for you, wherever you're coming from geographically or in terms of background. So do be in touch and we'd love to hear from you. But thanks, and we'll leave it there. So thanks very much.